Good afternoon. Let's see if things are working. So double checking. Double check. Okay. Things are working this time. Welcome. Good afternoon, Sunnyvale. Welcome to my weekly virtual office hours. Take two. We tried it this morning and definitely had some audio problems that people texted me during the meeting, but I do ignore texts during this live stream, and so didn't get to all the different people who had been texting me or putting in the chat that it wasn't working. So sorry about that. Sorry if you spent any time watching this morning. I'll hopefully go through all those points all over again, and hopefully people get a chance to watch this at the end of the day. But welcome to my weekly virtual office hours. We are definitely in the holiday season now, halfway through December. And this week's early artwork is from Murphy Park. So if you go to the Murphy Park buildings, you can see picture this art on the side of the park building, which is the art of the orchards and the trains, kind of the history of the Valley of Heart's Delight. So definitely, if you get a chance, take a look at that. Got more problems. One more chance. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Let me switch to my standard background. Hopefully everybody hears me this time. But good afternoon. So I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thanks for joining me again this week. This is the 143rd installment of my weekly office hours. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. Definitely COVID is on the rise, and you have flu and RSV out there too, but hopefully everyone's staying healthy. We've now reached 1,005 days since the March 16, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow COVID-19. So that we finally passed the 1,000-day mark. Almost 3 years ago, I switched my weekly coffee shop office hours into these weekly live stream addresses. And except for my shoulder surgery, I haven't missed a week since. People still say they appreciate hearing from their mayor each week, whether or not they're watching it live and telling the mayor that, the audio isn't working, or watching this video delayed. But it's really good for me to reach out to a lot of people. These updates allow me to give you some information, answer some of your questions, give you some info on what's upcoming and what's just passed from a city standpoint, and provide some general words of encouragement. So thanks for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale. Most Fridays, like I did this morning, I followed up my non-audio live stream address with talking to people in person, and always enjoy doing that at Being Seen on Murphy Avenue. If you ever want to reserve a time slot, email me, and you can reserve a 15 or 30-minute time slot, and we can find the best time to do that. I intermittently change my background art with art provided by the Sunnyvale Art Club artists. And I've been having this piece for a while, Andrea Coutura's Hot Pants. I thought it's actually good for the season. It has it's festive, and it has the kind of scarlet and greens, which is actually perfect for the holidays. If you're interested in this piece, or just to get in contact with the artist about other pieces they might have, just contact me and I'll put you in contact with the artist. Let's go ahead and get started and talk about what's happened at federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. 2 Saturdays ago, the U.S. ended up losing its World Cup game. So it was in the quarterfinals, and it was sudden death. So the U.S. is out of this year's World Cup. That being said, World Cup will coming back in just 3.5 years in the summer of 2026. They'll be back in North America this time. So 2 locations in Canada, 11 in the US, 3 in Mexico. But they'll be back here at Levi's Stadium. And as opposed to 32 teams, it will be 48 teams. So, lots going on from that standpoint. It'll be almost a month of events is what they're planning, and they're finalizing that schedule. But it's actually been pretty interesting to watch the World Cup. Those finals happen on Sunday morning. So for all those that are still following the World Cup, it should be an interesting weekend. But looking forward to what's going to be happening in our city and surrounding cities as we get closer to the World Cup in just a few years. Then last Saturday afternoon, evening, we had the 23rd annual holiday tree lighting in downtown Sunnyvale, Murphy Avenue. And there's a little rain, but we had a good number of people come out, thanks to the choir singers from the local schools that came out to entertain the crowd. We had, a photo booth. So thanks to City National Bank for providing that free photo booth to all the attendees. Lots of people enjoyed that. And then as far as later that evening, the Caltrain holiday train was at our Murphy station. And so ultimately, it was good to see that train that was always covered with lights. There's Santa, there's snowmen, there's singers, there's snow. So it's actually been, it was a very lively time, to say the least. And then last Tuesday evening, council met in person for the first time since the start of COVID. And so it was good to have council back on the dais for the first time. Some council members, it was their first time in an actual council meeting on the dais, Vice Mayor Cisneros and Councilmember Dean. But it was good to just have, everybody in one room. Ultimately, there was a good number of the crowd that was already there, residents that also attended. And, I think it was good to have that event. It's currently we're getting close to, at least from the state of emergency, as far as COVID's concerned, we're getting close to the end of that. And hopefully sometime soon, in the beginning of January, we're going to see that transition of council. So I wanted to make sure that we started having those in-person meetings as soon as possible and not wait to the very last date. As far as the main meeting is concerned, we approved the study for a revised cricket stadium proposal. And so this is a study issue that we kicked off a few years ago. Ultimately, we're looking at a cricket field as opposed to a cricket stadium, so much more of a berm and a multi-use field as opposed to an actual stadium at Baylands Park. And so council did approve that revised study issue. And then as far as going forward, it's like we'll continue that study and then evaluate what it would cost to actually implement that multi-use field. We also approved the city's response to the 2022 Santa Clara County Grand Jury report, titled, "If you only read the ballot, you'd be duped. You're being duped." But it's ultimately, in response to mainly what the Valley Water did from a county ballot measure this year, which was a little misleading. It was to limit the number of terms to 4 terms, even though they currently had 3 terms. So they basically, said they're going to limit, but what they're really doing is expanding the number of terms from 3 to 4. And so ultimately, that was a little or majorly disingenuous. And, for me, I was very sorry to see that ballot measure passed because of that misleading ballot wording. Ultimately, our response was mainly we're in control of our city ordinances, our city ballots, and we have a good city attorney to make sure that wording is independent and is fair and not misleading. Ultimately, if the county if the county added that process of having the district attorney the county district attorney actually look at all the ballot measures, it kind of slows down the overall process. So, it's for me, it was about local control and, conceivably focused on those that have misused the system. And then we also approved an ordinance regarding concealed carry firearms in sensitive places. This was kind of a duplicate pretty much of what didn't pass at the state level. It was tried to do an emergency ordinance and failed by two legislators. And so what we did was basically, say that concealed carry weapons, unless you're active military or federal police, can't be on city property, at schools, at parks, things of that nature. And it just provides a little more capability for DPS to respond if somebody reports seeing a gun in one of those places. So happy that we're trying to protect our citizens, giving our public safety a little more tools as far as that's concerned in dealing with potential safety issues with guns. And then last Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Cody had a press conference, and that's our county health officer, about the rising number of COVID, flu, and RSV numbers. The county monitors our wastewater systems and have seen, a continual number of increase as far as the percentage of COVID that they're finding in the wastewater. And, Dr. Cody was basically encouraging people again to do, maintain masking whenever possible, maintain social distancing. And then, of course, get your shot, get your booster if you haven't had it, get your flu shot. All these are critical for this season. And then let's see, on Saturday, there were, several craft fairs, one of which was an open house at Maker Nexus. So this is our maker nonprofit in Moffett Park. So lots of people selling items there and getting some hands-on, experience on creating crafts. Fairwood Elementary had their craft fair, and then at the Sunnyvale Library, the Friends of the Sunnyvale Library had their holiday book sale. So it was a busy day as far as that's concerned. And if you get a chance, definitely drop by the library. There's the Gingerbread Village, which is on display there until January 7th. So lots of time to go take a look at the Gingerbread Village. It's a second annual one. And it's actually expanded quite a bit. Lots of people created some very interesting things, public safety, an ice skating rink, lots of interesting buildings. So definitely go by the library if you get a chance and take a look at the Gingerbread Village. And then on Sunday in the afternoon, I joined lots of different residents from Sunnyvale and around the county at the annual Santa Run in San Jose. And it was actually good. It starts, downtown, and then ends at the Plaza de Cesar Chavez, where Christmas in the Park is. So got to enjoy that. But it's good to be out in the holiday spirit and raising funds for a good cause. And then as far as this week is concerned, and actually Sunday, I also got a chance to visit a group of residents who were making the Arches of Hope. So, these are holiday arches. They're PVC pipe with lights around them. And you'll find them a lot in multiple streets downtown. So if you go near, let's say, McKinley Avenue, McKinley and Bayview, you can see them. They're also kind of north of the Caltrain tracks near California Avenue and Sunnyvale Avenue. But these holiday arches, they started during COVID, and the group, the group of neighbors that started it decided to expand that effort. And, so the city ended up giving a grant to make that effort even wider. And I think they've created over 350 arches at this point. Lots of people were helping out, kids and adults, creating the arches. So definitely, if you get a chance, visit downtown, and you'll see some of them, kind of go through some of the downtown streets, but mainly Bayview and McKinley and Central Avenue over in that area. You can see a lot of the arches that have been created to get in that holiday spirit. And then as far as this week is concerned, we had a council meeting on Tuesday. That was our last council meeting of the year. We received the biggest thing is we received the comprehensive budget analysis for last fiscal year. And, so we finalize our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So it covered the 2021-2022 fiscal year. And it takes about 6 months to finalize all the revenue, all the final payments, and then have the auditors kind of review our year-end report, our fiscal year-end report. And it was actually really good. It's like we were in a very good place from a city standpoint. We ultimately approved budget modifications because we had about $13 million in net revenue over our budgeted numbers. And, that was because of several things. And, our city is very, very good as far as being a well-run city, but part of that is the policies that we have in place for a 10-year balanced budget and a 20-year plan. And, for us, property tax came in about 1.2 million above what was expected. Sales tax about $5 million above what we had estimated. And then transient occupancy tax, $2.3 million over what we had initially estimated. And so, and that shows that business travel is starting to come back a lot more than what we thought at the beginning of the fiscal year in 2021. So it's good to have that additional funds. Some cities around us are in the red, for this year and next year. I just heard San Francisco is several $100 million in the red for this year and next year. And so definitely, we're in pretty good shape. And then as far as the budget modifications, we did several things. We put aside $50,000 for an ADA transition plan. So this continues our efforts to do curb cuts in all of our sidewalks to make them ADA compliant. We put $2 million in a grant matching fund for transportation and sustainability grants, and funded about $500,000 for grant writing assistance. So there's lots of funding opportunities at the state level, at the federal level, and it's making sure that we have somebody who has the time, has the bandwidth to actually go out and, write those grants so that we can get additional funds. And then we set aside $100,000 for additional power washing downtown because of the crows. And, we have been looking at, what we can do there, but I think that's a stopgap, as we're looking at continuing to harass the crows. We'll have a question about that later. And then we put $2.5 million into a pension trust. So we have a peak from our pension liability in about 2028, 2029. And that helps. That pension trust is something that we're trying to do to basically alleviate that peak in our pension liability. So it's actually very good from that standpoint. And then the remainder, about $5.5 million, we put into the general fund budget stabilization fund. And, with next year's conceivable recession, and we with continued inflation, all those economic factors, it's really important that we, set aside funds to make sure that we're ready in case things get worse, in case, our conservative efforts and estimates as far as what the value is, or what's happening with a city standpoint and our budget and our service levels, in case, the revenues come in quite lower, or we have bigger expenditures, we're ready for that at any time. We also, let's see, what else did we do? We did an emergency set of ordinances. And so, emergency ordinances going into effect as quickly as possible to amend certain zoning and construction codes. So basically, some of the state laws that passed earlier this year that the governor signed in September, October, ultimately go into effect on January 1st. And what we needed to do from a city standpoint is make sure that our city code is updated so that there's no disparity between what our city is requiring and what the state is requiring.
So we updated, our ADU codes, and, I've been a big proponent for ADUs for a while. But one of the things that the new state laws required was height limits. So, height of 16 feet or 18 feet, depending upon how close you are to a high quality transit corridor. There's requirements for no parking minimums within a major transit stop. And a major transit stop is considered to be, the two Sunnyvale Caltrain stations or A to the VTA light rail stops. So ultimately, it's important that, we meet these state laws, and ultimately, one of the things that the laws also required, was to handle small and large home daycare systems, home family child care homes as the same. So from a code standpoint, we had to do some updates as far as that. We kind of treated them differently from a noticing standpoint and a permitting standpoint, but all that's cleaned up. All that was, basically had to have a supermajority council do that so we can do that emergency ordinance. And then on Wednesday of this week, it was actually good. Smart Asset declared Sunnyvale as the happiest city in the United States. So, Disneyland is the happiest place in the world, but Sunnyvale this week was, or at least for this year, was the happiest city in the nation. And so Smart Asset analyzed about 200 of the largest cities in the U.S. and found that looking at the metrics of safety, income, education, marriage, that Sunnyvale came out on top, and happy that we are the happiest city. So, it's actually an interesting award, but, we get a lot of these sorts of awards when you start looking at this from a statistical standpoint, being a very safe city and being, in general, a well-off city from a residential standpoint. It's a great place to, well-run city. From a fiscal standpoint, we're able to get our infrastructure done to a large part, and making sure that things are going relatively smooth. So happy to get those accolades whenever we can. And then Thursday night, so last night, the 49ers beat Seattle to become the NFC champions. So we'll definitely be hearing a lot more about, as we go into the playoffs, about a lot more from the 49ers and all those 49ers fans in our community. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly COVID numbers. COVID numbers across the nation are still on the rise. So hospitalizations because of COVID, RSV, the flu continue to increase. From a national standpoint, there are now 99.7 million cases. That increased about 500,000 just in the last week. We'll definitely be breaking 100 million cases sometime over the next week. And then nationally, we have had 225 million, more than 2/3 of the population fully vaccinated, and 49% have received a booster. So it's actually positive from that standpoint. 84% of those 5 and older have had at least one dose, and nationally, about 78% of adults are fully vaccinated. We still have people passing away because of COVID. We've now reached 1,083,000 deaths, another 3,000 just in the last week. And then as far as California, it's still surging. We've now had 10,790,000 positive cases. And that, of course, is just what's been reported. A lot of people are doing home testing and not necessarily reporting that. And then we continue to see an increase in the average of new cases a day. So we're now at 8,600 cases a day. That's up from 7,800 last week, 5,400 a day a week before that. So we've more than doubled just in the last month, and now we're at 11% test case positivity over the last 8 weeks. So, lots of people getting COVID. I hear that all the time. And it's amazing, people that have been without COVID for all the last 2.5, almost 3 years. Some of them are finally, catching COVID. So if you're out, definitely do what you can to be safe. California has now had, another 200 deaths. So we're over 97,000 fatalities. And then, earlier this week, there were questions from to Governor Newsom's office about whether or not he would extend this COVID state of emergency past February 28th. That's the official end. And the state is battling flu and RSV. But right now, the governor's office said, that is the date that will end. But you never know what might happen in January, especially if the holiday numbers get progressively worse with everybody, meeting people during the holidays as well as traveling and bringing it back. So we'll see where we stand come January. And then from a county standpoint, we've now passed a cumulative case count of about 458,000. That's up about 5,000 just in the last week of cases with COVID. And then we've had additional 10 deaths to 2,543 deaths. We've had more than 95% of those 18 and older are fully vaccinated, and over 70% of those that are eligible for the booster have already received at least one booster dose. So, it's good that our residents are doing what they can, to fight COVID. And, I continue to advocate on our city's behalf, with our county supervisors, with county health. If you need to get tested, you can go to secfreetest.org. If you need to get vaccinated, you can go to secfreevax.org. Definitely from a testing standpoint, the government said that they will be giving out another round of tests to anybody who orders them. So you can go online right now. I think it's covidtests.gov, and you can sign up to have them delivered by the post office to your home. So you can, we still need to be testing as much as possible, especially whenever we think we've been exposed. Let me go ahead and announce some of the upcoming events. So tomorrow, Saturday, Tetra Hotel in Moffett Park will have its last free holiday event. And I've heard from people working there, as well as, residents and parents, that they've had a lot of fun times there over the last 3 weeks. But tomorrow, Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m., they'll have their last holiday event. And so it has complimentary treats, so s'mores and cider and hot chocolate. There's a life-size snow globe. There's snow. There's a drag queen, Mrs. Claus. There's live music. Lots going on. Tomorrow they'll actually also have a ugly sweater competition, and you can win prizes. I think even a free night stay or 2-night stay at Tetra. So definitely, if you get a chance, go out tomorrow. I'm going to try to make it by for a little bit, but happy that they're trying to give back to our community and kind of build a following, build a fun place to go for residents out in Moffett Park. And then this Sunday, there will actually be an exhibit at the Sunnyvale Library. It's called Darshana, a glimpse into the Hindu civilization, and that'll be from 1 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. at the library. And I saw a mini version of this at one of the Diwali events earlier in the year, and I think they wanted to make it open to more people. They just actually had a display at the Santa Clara Library. So if you get a chance, drop by Sunday afternoon. And then, of course, Monday is Hanukkah. So Hag Samayag for those that are celebrating. And definitely it's lots of holiday events going on this time of year, but definitely lots of Jewish followers in our community, and happy that wishing them all the best. And then as far as upcoming council meetings, our next big meeting will be on January 3rd, 2023. We get to say goodbye to some of the outgoing council members. So Councilmember Glenn Hendricks, former mayor, and Councilmember Gustav Larson will be finishing 9 years on council. So they will be finishing their 9 years. And then Tony Spitaleri, who was appointed earlier this year in the spring to fill the seat that Mason Fong opened up when he resigned from council a year ago. So we'll be saying goodbye to those three. And then we'll also be seating, swearing in our new district council members. And then we'll also choose a new mayor, or sorry, a new vice mayor that evening. So lots going on. So we'll definitely join if you get a chance. It should be, it's a lot of ceremony. We'll have a few other logistical things from intergovernmental responsibilities that we'll be appointing later in the evening. But the first part of the meeting should be actually very interesting, with the outgoing council members giving speeches and the incoming council members giving speeches. So that happens on 7 p.m. on January 3rd, Tuesday, January 3rd. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. If you happen to be watching online, you can add those questions now. But let's go ahead. First up is Morgan. Morgan asked, "Hi, I'm a Sunnyvale resident. I'd like to know if the town is doing anything about the infestation of crows. We can't eat downtown without fearing our meals will have bird droppings." So actually the city has restarted the use of the green lasers to harass the crows away from downtown. So we have a park, one of our parks engineers that goes downtown in the evenings to scare away the crows as they're coming back as the sun sets. But that works to some degree. Council, as I said earlier, approved increasing the spray washing of the sidewalks along Evelyn, Plaza del Sol, as well as the Murphy Avenue itself. So we're trying to deal with the crows as well as we can. Stephen asked, what happened with the Sunnyvale elections? So I talked a little bit about this last week, but for District 1, so District 1 is the southeast corner of Sunnyvale. So Linda Sell was declared the winner. She was the only one who filled out the paperwork, and the only one that was qualified and ready to run for that district. So we ended up canceling that district election, which saved the city a little bit of money. And then in District 5, which is from the Caltrain tracks to 101 approximately, Richard Mellinger. So he's been on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advocacy Commission. He's been on the Historical Society board. So he ended up winning that with about, I think, 65–70% of the vote. And then D3 was a nail biter, as I said last week. The ROV Register of Voters declared Murli Srinivasan as winner with a single vote. So he beat Justin Wang. And that really shows that everyone's vote counts. A single vote, or in this case, two votes made the difference. So one tied and one took Murli ahead. But ultimately, the county registrar did a recount because the election was so close, and finally declared a winner last Thursday or Wednesday night, one of the two. I'm losing track of time, but I just saw actually in a report that Justin Wang has actually asked for another recount from the Register of Voters. So we'll see if anything changes. Definitely. So that kicks off. And so since the County Register of Voters has already done a recount, this will actually be under, Justin's expense. So he actually is paying for, I think, $12,000 a day for the county registrar to recount those votes. And I'm not sure how many days it's going to take for the 5,500 votes that are 56, something close to that, 100 votes that were cast in that election. So we'll see if anything changes, but right now Murli was the winner, and then we'll see if the recount does anything as far as the changing is concerned. Hoy asked, is Sunnyvale's minimum wage the highest in the country or California? How is small business managing the increase? So as far as this year is concerned, for 2022, Mountain View and Sunnyvale had the same minimum wage. They had $17.10. Emeryville was higher at $17.67. Seattle was actually $17.27. And Palo Alto was at $16.45. Ultimately, going into next year, Sunnyvale will be going to $17.95. Mountain View actually goes to $18.15 because both of us increased by CPI, Consumer Price Index. However, we had a cap on that. We had a 5% maximum. Palo Alto will go to $17.25, and Cupertino will be at $17.25. And I'm always shocked about the multiple cities that still sit at the state minimum. So on January 1st, the state will go from $15 to $15.50. But Campbell, Los Gatos, Saratoga, all of them are just following the state minimum, and those are relatively rich communities. The concept that their small businesses are paying the state minimum wage is a little surprising, to say the least. And then, of course, the federal minimum wage is still at $7.25 and hasn't increased since 2009. So you would have thought that it's somewhere along the way that would have been increased. Other questions? Lee asked, I saw in the news about the homeless encampment in Lakewood Park. What happened? So, 2 weeks ago, we posted a notice about Lakewood Park and the hours as far as people camping there overnight. And it's been a group of unhoused that have been there almost a year now. And we paid, earlier this year, we paid Home First. We set aside Home First money for Home First to do outreach, to first give them, services, to try to get them into county services and provide assistance, hopefully get them into transitional or permanent housing. And then we also just basically set aside beds at a shelter. So we said we would pay permanently to reserve these shelter beds for the unhoused that we would offer to move them out of the park. None of the 5 that were at Lakewood Park decided to take us up on that offer, which was a little disheartening from my standpoint. I was hoping to get them out of the cold, and so ultimately it was not what we had hoped. But I heard from a lot of residents that had issues with not being able to use the picnic tables and having all the unhoused mess there, and right next to Lakewood Elementary. So they've definitely been appreciative of the city finally doing that. There's been complaints on both sides of not moving fast enough, or not having a heart that we provided shelter beds. Why didn't we provide hotel rooms? And from a city standpoint, I think the shelter beds were a great option, and I wish there more of the unhoused that were there had taken that. We were also going to keep any of their belongings in storage if need be, and it was not the best situation I'd hoped for at the end of that. Sharon asked, I keep asking but haven't gotten an answer. The AT&T infrastructure in our neighborhood is very old. Max capacity is 6 Mbps. Rarely get that, is insufficient, and neighbors have tried other options. Also unreliable and inadequate. What is the city doing to bring us up to par, and when? So AT&T and Comcast infrastructure is owned by the provider. So they're using the city right away, but the providers own their infrastructure and the quality of that infrastructure. So they should be upgrading their own equipment. So I reached out to Comcast. I haven't heard back. I pinged them again this week or earlier, for the second time to kind of point out that their reps are basically blaming the city for poor service when it's their own. Also looking to see if we can get, some digital divide infrastructure in some of our local parks or community centers, to try to make sure that people that need to get access to the internet, it's provided wherever we can in the city. Judy asked, will Sunnyvale bring back the ice skating rink this year? So not this year. The ice skating rink was run and sponsored and, completely managed by City Line, Sunnyvale, so the downtown, mall developer. So they basically said not this year. They'll hope to bring it back next year. There's so much construction happening downtown. It's a little difficult as far as that's concerned, but ultimately, they do have a plan to bring back the ice skating rink either next year or the year after. So looking forward to that, looking forward to that activity. Jackie asked, can you do captions for hard of hearing? So I checked, and the videos that I upload to YouTube have closed captions. So, definitely you have that chance to watch those closed captions there. They're automatically generated. And actually I went back and looked at the videos that are on Facebook, and Facebook actually processes them and has the option to turn on closed captions for my live streams here too. So, definitely this morning's was without sound since something was wrong with the technology, but this one should be fine as far as that's concerned. And hopefully if you want, you can just rewatch it and turn on closed captions. I think that's all the questions that I have. Doesn't look like looks like everybody can hear me this time and things are going well. I don't see any questions, so I will go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again this week. Delayed by a few hours after our technical difficulties, but we're still in uncertain times. New issues are always coming up. The tridemic of the cold season and cold and flu season is upon us, but I want to thank you that no matter what challenges we face them together. I'm proud of Sunnyvale and how our residents continue to help out in our community, to volunteer, showing their kindness, showing their generosity, being happy. Your actions and your attitude really do make a difference. Being the happiest city in the nation, Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful week. Take care. Goodbye.